Hello and welcome to this session, Benchmark Advance Online Assessments Reports Overview. In today's session, I'd like to show you the types of reports you have and how to access them. First, log into your Benchmark Universe account and from the dashboard choose Reports. This opens up the Linkit Reporting area. On this screen, select Dashboard. From the drop-down menu, choose your school. Now you're in the teacher dashboard. The page label shows it to you right at the top. You see your name and a number of ways that you can filter your assessments here. You can also use the scroll bar to see the assessments your students have already taken. You can either hold and drag those assessments into the viewing area or use the Select Test button. A frequently asked question is, why don't I see my students' assessments here? First of all, check the date range. Up at the top, it says period from and to. If you need to change this, click on the calendar icon and select a date from and a date to make sure that the assessment date when the assessment was given falls within the date range that you have selected, and then click OK. If you still don't see the assessment here, another explanation is that the assessments in Benchmark Advance, almost all of them, have constructed response items. The assessments that populate this space are those where the constructed response items have already been scored. So make sure that you have the constructed response items scored. Then you'll see the assessment in this space, and also when you click Select Tests. Select Tests gives the same information, the same assessments, but now it's in a chart format. So either way, you can choose an assessment to view the results. I'll select Grade 1, Interim 1, and up at the top, View Summary Results. This is a good place to start because it's an overview report. The reports are easy to use and intuitive with color-coded and graphic information. When I open the summary report, I see the name of the assessment, the number of students who took it, their average score, and their achievement broken down into color-coded bands. I can see what those colors stand for here, and hovering over any of them, I can see the percent and the number of students who scored in that band. These colors are consistent throughout all of the reports, so if you see this green, you always know it represents achievement at 80% and above. The reports are also interactive, so you can decide what information you'd like to show. Here, showing school and district results below my teacher results. Deselecting them takes that information away. There are 5 key reporting areas, and the icons to click through to those reports are here. We'll begin with student results. I'll click on the icon to open the student results report. At the top of the page, I can see the path on how I got to the report and which report I'm looking at, student results. The students are listed in alphabetical order. I see the date on which they took the assessment and the percent that they earned. Clicking on the word percent reorders them, so now they're in the order according to their color-coded achievement band. The reports can also be printed out. Clicking on the print button, I can save it as a PDF file or I can print it. This is helpful to view the data offline or to share the data with colleagues or a parent. To get back to my teacher dashboard when I'm finished with the report, I'll click on the link. The next type of report is item analysis. Clicking on the icon opens it to the class view. We can also view it as individual student reports, and we'll look at that in just a minute. You can see that the data is organized according to each test question item. I can see the question, correct answer, possible points, points my students earned, and their choices, including the color coding on the correct choice. So I can right away see 56% of my students got this choice, letter B, correct. Up above, you have a number of ways to show the data: district results and school results, add separate lines below your own class information. Deselecting that takes it away. I can show the standards and show the full description, meaning the language of the standards. So now as I scroll down, I can see test question by test question which standard was assessed by that particular question. I can also show topics, the general topics within the reading standards, and deselecting that to show other tags. This is the depth of knowledge, or DOK levels. I can see right away question 4 was really difficult for my students, and it's a good time for me to click on the queue for questions to open up. I want to see what this question was. So who is telling the story? Answer A, Van. B, Van's mother. C, the correct answer, someone not in the story. This is pretty abstract, and my students found it difficult. Using the X closes the question box. I'll click on DOK3 and I'll notice that it was assessed on 2 question items, 4 and 12, and my students on average got 47% correct. So this is an area that my students need more experience and direct teaching with so they can perform better at this depth of knowledge level. I'll click Show Question Types to open up the different question types that are on this assessment. You can see one of them, question 31, is an extended text. This is a constructed response item and one of those that you would need to score manually with the rubric in order for the data to populate the reports. Let's take a look now at the student reports. To do this, click on the Student Reports button. Use the drop-down menu to select your class. The students will populate in alphabetical order, but you can use the Sort by Score button to sort them according to their achievement level. I'll choose Marcus Harden. When the report opens, I can see right away the color coding, which answers were correct and which he made mistakes on. Below his answers are the class average color-coded, so it makes it easy to see how Marcus compares with his classmates. Up above the chart, once again, you have a number of different options to show the data. I'll start with standards. Clicking on the standards as I scroll down has brought up a chart that shows, first of all, the standards code, then the language of the standards, the questions on which that standard was assessed, Marcus's score, and the class average. This is interesting because I can see right away that on standard L1.4 there were 4 questions assessed. Marcus got 100% as compared to my class at 81%. It's a pretty big difference. Below it, I can see by contrast that in the RF standard, Marcus scored well below my class at 33%, where the class was 63%. You might wonder why there are only 6 standards showing. One of the ways that we can determine how the data is being displayed is to show the tags according to the number of test question items that were connected or associated with that. I can use the down arrow to decrease that value. In other words, right now, only test questions with 3 or more questions for that standard are showing. If I decrease it, I'll increase the number of standards, as you can see here as I scroll down. So now every standard that was assessed on the assessment with at least 1 test question is showing. So there are quite a few ways in this report that you can customize how you're viewing it. This is a great report to print and show to parents. When I'm finished with the report, I'll use the teacher dashboard link to bring me back into the summary report. Next, let's look at Class Diagnostic. I'll use the drop-down menu to select my class, and notice that I have a few choices on the type of data I want to view: standards, topics, other tags, remember that's the depth of knowledge level, and questions. For now, I'll leave it at standards. Once again, I can show standards with 3 or more associated test question items. This gives me the strongest data, but like with the other reports, it's interactive and I could decrease that if I chose to do it. Right now, the standards are listed in alphabetical order, but if I click on the average column, it reorders it to show the standards that my students struggled most severely with. For example, RF 1.3. If I click on it, I can see another breakout of the data according to my students grouped in the color-coded mastery levels. And you can do that for any of the standards and scroll through to see how your students scored. So this is a very helpful interactive report. The next type we'll look at is custom reports. Clicking on the icon opens up a very interactive space. The purpose of custom reports is to allow me to see exactly the data I'm interested in. To start, I'll drop down the menu and choose Students. I want to see how my students each performed on particular standards. So in the secondary grouping, I'll choose the word standard. There are other choices I could make, topic, other tags, remember that's the depth of knowledge level, but for right now, I'll choose standards. Next, I'll select Set Filters, and from here, choose Tags. Underneath the Standards area, I'm going to scroll down to see the different RF 1.3 standards. These were difficult for my students. Once I've selected them, I'll use the Close button. Next, I'll click Create Reports. When the report generates, you can scroll through to see all of your students as well as the different standards. Below, you have the graphic representation of the same data. Show Averages brings another bar into each one of the standards reports, and you can see that shown in blue. Just like the other reports, I can print this and I could export it. I have a number of different ways that I can do that. So when I'm finished with this area, I'll click Teacher Dashboard to come back into the Overview report. The last report is the Grouping report. Clicking on the icon opens up a place where I can select which way my students will be grouped, according to standards, topics, or other. Remember that other refers to the depth of knowledge or DOK level of the questions. I'll choose standards and click Continue. The mathematics that has analyzed the data, meaning the software itself, has selected some high priority standards for me. This is a default and makes it very easy for me to see the standards that my students had the most trouble with. If I wanted to change the default number of groups, which was set to 4, I can use the up-down arrow to do that. Next, I'll click Create Groups, and immediately I can see my students grouped together according to their performance level. Across the top, I can see column headings. The number 15, for example, refers to RF 1.2C, and that number I can see in parenthesis here, and hovering over it, I see the language of the standard. Column 16, for example, is here, RF 1.3. So each one of these columns represents a standard that was pre-selected by the software as a high priority standard, and the groups were created accordingly. I can see the student's average and the group number that they belong to. If I did want to change the number of groups, I'll use the up-down arrow to do that, and then click Create Groups again. And now they've been shifted to reflect the number of groups that I selected, the 4 groups. Once again, this report can be printed out, which makes it easy for me to view the data offline or to share that information, for example, with a paraprofessional or teaching assistant or other colleague who may be helping me to deliver the targeted instruction based on the groups that were formed. I'll use the Teacher Dashboard link to come back to the summary report. Today we've looked at the summary report as well as the 5 key reporting areas that together will help bring a data-driven instructional model to life in your classroom. Thank you.